In this video, we'll look at 19 actors currently rotting in jail and the reasons why. Number 19, Michael Jace. Michael Jace, widely recognized for his role as LAPD officer Julian Lowe on the television series The Shield, saw his life and career unravel in 2014 when, in May of that year, he shot and killed April at their Los Angeles home. Jace's life and career were marked by struggles that became increasingly apparent. On the night of May 19, 2014, these tensions tragically culminated when Jace, in a fit of rage, confronted April about a supposed affair and then shot her multiple times. According to testimony during the trial, Jace shot his wife once in the back and twice in the legs, reportedly saying, "If you want to run, run to heaven," referencing her career as a runner. The couple's 2 young children were present during the incident. Immediately after the shooting, Jace called 911, admitting to the dispatcher that he had shot his wife. When police arrived, they found April Jace lifeless at the scene, and Michael Jace was taken into custody. The charges brought against Jace were severe. He was initially charged with murder, facing potential life imprisonment if convicted. The trial revealed evidence of both the shooting and Jace's history of alleged abuse. Jace's defense claimed that he acted in a moment of passion and argued for a lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter. However, the jury was unpersuaded, and in 2016, Jace was found guilty of second-degree murder. At age 53, Michael Jace was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison. He is currently incarcerated at the Corcoran State Prison and will not be eligible for parole until he has served at least 40 years, meaning he could be released in his early 90s, around the year 2056, if granted parole. Be sure to stick to the end to see the Squid Game actor recently sent to jail, plus 1 newly arrested actor rotting in jail. Number 18, Danny Masterson. Masterson, known for his comedic timing and charm as Stephen Hyde, was, for years, at the center of an undercurrent of sexual assault accusations that eventually led to his incarceration. The accusations date back to the early 2000s, when Masterson was a prominent figure in Hollywood. For years, some victims claimed they stayed silent, largely out of fear and intimidation, while Masterson continued his life in the spotlight. Speculations arose about why he might commit such offenses. Some attributed his alleged actions to a sense of entitlement or invincibility, often seen in individuals in positions of power. Others pointed to the influence of the Church of Scientology, of which he was a prominent member. As a potential reason, victims felt discouraged from coming forward. According to testimonies, victims reported feeling pressured by the church not to report the incidents to law enforcement, as the church often discouraged external scrutiny of its members. This created a challenging environment for the victims and added another layer of complexity to the allegations against Masterson. In 2017, following the Me Too movement and increased media attention on abuses within Hollywood, multiple women came forward with allegations against Masterson, claiming that he had sexually assaulted them between 2001 and 2003. The investigation led to Masterson's arrest in 2020, with 3 women accusing him of forcing himself onto them in his Hollywood Hills home. Prosecutors argued that Masterson's actions were premeditated, asserting that he would provide his victims with alcohol to impair their judgment before assaulting them. These accusations were not just career-ending, they were career-defining. When the allegations came to light, the fallout for Masterson was swift and severe. He was fired from his role on the Netflix series The Ranch, a decision that publicly and symbolically severed his ties with Hollywood. His career, once promising and established, was effectively ended as these allegations became central to his public identity. As more details emerged, it became clear that he would not be able to separate himself from the accusations. In 2023, after a lengthy trial that was scrutinized by the public and media alike, A jury found Masterson guilty of 2 counts of forcible sexual assault, though they were unable to reach a verdict on a 3rd charge. He was sentenced to 30 years to life in prison. Masterson was 47 years old at the time of his sentencing, meaning that he will not be eligible for parole until he is at least 77, with a projected release around 2053 if he serves the full term. Currently, he is incarcerated at the California Men's Colony. The case continues to attract attention, particularly due to the involvement of the Church of Scientology, which some victims claim played a role in suppressing their voices and protecting Masterson for years. Recent developments include additional investigations into the church's alleged interference in the case, and some victims have filed civil suits against both Masterson and the church, claiming emotional and psychological abuse. Masterson's defense has filed appeals in an attempt to overturn his conviction, but legal experts suggest that his chances of success are slim, given the extensive evidence and testimonies presented in court. Number 17, Drew Drechsel. Drew Drechsel, the celebrated star of American Ninja Warrior, fell from grace in 2020 when he was arrested on charges related to child exploitation. Drechel's arrest stemmed from an investigation that began in 2019 when a teenage girl came forward with accusations. She claimed that she and Drechsel had met at an American Ninja Warrior event in 2015 when she was only 15, and that he initiated an inappropriate relationship with her. According to court documents, the relationship involved explicit messaging and eventually progressed to physical encounters. The investigation revealed that Drechsel had traveled to meet the victim on several occasions, and he allegedly persuaded her to keep the relationship secret. As federal agents dug deeper, they uncovered further evidence of inappropriate communications, including explicit images and text exchanges between Drechsel and the minor. Drechel's arrest shook the American Ninja Warrior community, and the show's producers quickly distanced themselves from him, removing all footage and references to Drechsel from their content. His sponsors and endorsements also swiftly terminated their relationships with him. His reputation and career were destroyed virtually overnight. In August 2020, Drechsel was charged with multiple federal crimes, including manufacturing lewd materials involving children, traveling with intent to engage in illicit sexual conduct with a minor, and enticement of a minor to engage in illegal sexual acts. Facing severe allegations and substantial evidence, Drechsel eventually entered a guilty plea. In 2023, he pleaded guilty to 1 count of receiving illegal material involving children and 1 count of knowingly persuading, inducing, enticing and coercing a minor to travel interstate to engage in sexual activity. In 2024, he was sentenced to 10 years and 1 month in federal prison, followed by 15 years of supervised release. He was also ordered to pay $100,000 in restitution to the victim. He was 35 years of age at the time of incarceration, and he is expected to be released around 2034, by which time he will be in his mid-40s. Number 16, Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein was once one of Hollywood's most powerful film producers, even appearing in some of them, and now resides in prison following convictions for numerous sexual crimes that emerged as part of one of the largest scandals in entertainment history. His downfall began in 2017 when multiple women accused him of sexual misconduct, harassment, and assault, igniting the global Me Too movement. As more accusers came forward, Weinstein's pattern of abuse over decades became clear. He had allegedly manipulated, coerced, and assaulted numerous women, leveraging his influence and power to silence them. Weinstein's actions can be traced back to the power dynamics he exploited in Hollywood, where he was known for producing award-winning films and launching successful careers. With Miramax and later the Weinstein Company, he wielded immense influence, making him nearly untouchable. Women in the industry reported that Weinstein would use his authority to lure young actresses and assistants, often arranging private meetings in hotel rooms under the pretense of professional discussions. Once alone, many alleged, he would attempt or succeed in acts of sexual misconduct, sometimes using threats to ruin their careers if they refused or resisted. The flood of allegations against Weinstein gained mainstream media attention with investigative articles by the New York Times and the New Yorker in 2017. These investigations exposed numerous incidents, with several women publicly recounting his acts of coercion and violence. In February 2020, Weinstein was convicted of third-degree forcible sexual assault and a first-degree criminal sexual act related to incidents with 2 women. In addition to these, more than 80 women had accused him of misconduct, although most cases were either outside the statute of limitations or lacked sufficient evidence for criminal charges. At his sentencing in March 2020, Weinstein was 68 years old and was given 23 years in prison, a sentence that the New York Court of Appeals overturned in a 4-3 decision on the basis that Weinstein did not receive a fair trial, arguing that some women should not have been allowed to give testimony because they were not named in charges brought against him. Weinstein's legal troubles extended beyond New York. In California, he faced additional charges for incidents involving 5 women between 2004 and 2013. In 2022, a Los Angeles jury convicted him of forcible sexual assault and sexual assault in connection with assaults on several women. He received an additional 16-year sentence, which will begin after he completes his time in New York, all but guaranteeing he will spend the rest of his life behind bars should his new trial in New York result in a similar prison sentence. Number 15, Josh Duggar, a prominent reality TV personality from the show 19 Kids and Counting, faced a devastating fall from grace that culminated in his 2021 arrest and imprisonment on charges involving minors. In 2015, revelations surfaced that he had engaged in inappropriate behavior with 5 underage girls, including his sisters, when he was a teenager. Although no legal charges were filed at the time, the scandal led to the cancellation of 19 Kids and Counting, and Josh entered a faith-based rehabilitation program. Later that year, he was publicly named in the Ashley Madison data leak, which exposed him as having used the website to arrange extramarital affairs. This series of events severely damaged his reputation and led to estrangement from several family members. Despite these controversies, Duggar continued to maintain a low public profile, appearing at family events and working for his family's used car dealership. However, in 2019, federal authorities began investigating Duggar's online activity as part of a larger probe into procurement and usage of lewd materials involving minors. The investigation led to the discovery that Duggar had used the dark web to download explicit material involving minors. According to court documents, Duggar had installed a sophisticated software program on his computer that bypassed the monitoring program his wife used to oversee his internet activity. This software allowed him to access graphic videos and images undetected, some of which involved children so young we will not mention their ages in this video. It is just disgusting. Duggar was arrested in April 2021 and indicted with 2 counts: receiving and possessing lewd materials of children. His case went to trial in November 2021, where prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence of his digital footprint and the material found on his devices. Forensic experts testified that Duggar had downloaded illegal content over several days, and one investigator described the material as some of the worst he had encountered in his career. Duggar's defense argued that someone else could have downloaded the material, but the court found his explanations unconvincing. In December 2021, Duggar was found guilty on both counts. In May 2022, he was sentenced to 12.5 years in federal prison. Duggar, then 34 years old, was incarcerated at FC1 Segoville in Texas, a federal facility known for housing individuals convicted of similar offenses. With good behavior, he could potentially be released in 2032 when he would be around 44 years old. As part of his sentence, Duggar will also face restrictions on unsupervised contact with minors, including his own children, upon his release. The fallout from Duggar's crimes has been severe, though, not only for him, but also for his family. His wife, Anna, has faced intense public scrutiny and backlash, particularly as she has continued to support her husband throughout his legal battles. The broader Duggar family has distanced themselves from him, and the family's influence within the conservative Christian community has been deeply tarnished. TLC, which had rebranded their series as Counting On after the 2015 scandal, permanently cancelled the show in 2021, effectively severing the family's last ties to mainstream media. Number 14, Jared Fogle. Jared Fogle, once known as the Subway Guy, became a symbol of weight loss and success in the early 2000s after crediting his 245-pound weight loss to eating only at Subway. For over a decade, he was Subway's leading spokesperson, appearing in countless commercials and making public appearances across the United States. He found so much success and parlayed some of it into acting, appearing in movies such as Sharknado. But in 2015, Fogle's image was shattered when an investigation revealed he was involved in crimes involving minors. The story that followed shocked the public and destroyed the career he had built with Subway. Fogle's downfall began in 2015 when the FBI investigated Russell Taylor, the director of Fogle's charity, the Jared Foundation, and a close associate. The investigation into Taylor led authorities to discover explicit material involving minors that had been produced and distributed. Taylor's arrest revealed evidence linking Fogle himself to criminal activities. Soon after, Fogle's own electronic devices were seized, uncovering texts, emails, and records indicating his involvement in the exploitation of minors. Federal agents found that Fogle had solicited explicit images from minors and engaged in illicit behavior that spanned multiple states, activities that were confirmed through disturbing text exchanges with associates. Fogle's actions were not only criminal, but profoundly hypocritical, as he had used his public platform to promote health, wellness, and positive change for youth. He also presented himself as a philanthropist, running the Jared Foundation, which supposedly worked to fight childhood obesity. However, it was later revealed that the foundation had little genuine impact, failing to use most of its funds toward charitable work and raising questions about Fogle's intentions. Subway immediately ended its relationship with him, removing all advertising and materials featuring his likeness. In August 2015, Fogle pled guilty to 2 significant charges: distributing and receiving lewd material involving minors and traveling to engage in illicit sexual conduct with a minor. Facing a potential sentence of decades, Fogle reached a plea agreement which included paying $1.4 million in restitution to his victims and agreeing to receive mental health treatment. His guilty plea led to a sentence of 15 years and 8 months in federal prison with no chance of parole. Fogle was 38 years old when he was sentenced, and his expected release date is around 2029, when he will be in his early 50s. He is currently serving his sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution in Englewood, Colorado, a low-security prison that houses offenders convicted of similar crimes. In recent years, he has filed unsuccessful appeals attempting to reduce his sentence, arguing that his legal representation was inadequate and that his sentence was excessive. The appeals have all been dismissed. Number 13, Zach Avery. Avery's story begins with his ambitions running high. He was keen to make a mark in Hollywood, not just as an actor, but also as an entrepreneur in the film industry. This dream led him to establish one in Capital, a company he claimed would secure foreign distribution rights for English-language films. Avery presented himself as a visionary who could bridge the gap between Hollywood and international markets. In his pitch to investors, Avery claimed that he had lucrative licensing deals with streaming giants like Netflix and HBO, promising substantial and fast returns. But Hollywood is a world where glitter and reality often blur, and Avery's ambitions soon led him down a treacherous path. In reality, Avery's deals were fictitious. From 2014 to 2019, he orchestrated a Ponzi scheme that defrauded investors of approximately $650 million. He convinced investors that he had exclusive distribution deals, but instead, he used their money to pay off previous investors, creating a cycle of Ponzi deception. The funds he raised didn't go toward film projects. Instead, Avery funded a lifestyle of luxury, complete with lavish homes, designer clothes, and expensive trips. To maintain his facade, he even forged emails and contracts to reassure investors that their money was safe and growing. The scale of Avery's deception eventually drew scrutiny. Investors began to demand returns, and Avery's empire of lies began to crumble. The FBI launched an investigation, revealing the extent of his fraudulent activities. The documents Avery had used to lure investors were fake, and the millions he claimed to have made for his company were non-existent. His entire operation was a mirage, built on false promises and forged documents, leaving his investors in financial ruin. When the case went to court, Avery was found guilty of securities fraud and wire fraud, with the court condemning his elaborate scheme and the devastation it caused to victims. In 2022, at the age of 35, Zach Avery was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison and was ordered to pay over $230 million in restitution to the defrauded investors. Avery's crimes not only ended his budding career in Hollywood, but also shattered any future prospects, marking him as one of Hollywood's most infamous con artists. He is projected to be released in 2042, when he will be around 55 years old. Number 12, Will Hayden. Will Hayden, the former star of Discovery Channel's reality show Sons of Guns, saw his life and career collapse after he was convicted of heinous crimes that shocked his fans and the general public. Known on the show as a skilled gunsmith and owner of Red Jacket firearms, Hayden's television persona was one of a tough, no-nonsense weapons expert, admired for his knowledge of firearms. However, in 2014, allegations surfaced that revealed a disturbing side to Hayden's life, leading to his eventual imprisonment on charges of sexual assault. The accusations first emerged in August 2014, when one of Hayden's daughters accused him of sexual abuse, a revelation that led to his arrest. Initially, he denied the charges, claiming they were fabricated and motivated by a vendetta from a disgruntled ex-girlfriend. However, as investigations continued, additional victims came forward, including one of Hayden's other daughters, who alleged that he had abused her as well. The evidence against him quickly mounted, painting a picture of repeated abuse that had gone on for years. The specific charges against Hayden were grave. He faced multiple counts of aggravated sexual assault, aggravated incest, and forcible sexual assault. As more details came to light, it was revealed that the abuse had been occurring over an extended period, with victims testifying about the trauma they endured. During the trial, witnesses recounted harrowing stories, detailing how Hayden had used his position as a trusted figure to manipulate and control his victims. The consequences for Hayden's career were immediate and final. Discovery Channel quickly cancelled Sons of Guns following his arrest, and Red Jacket Firearms distanced itself from him. The once celebrated firearms expert and reality star became a figure of public disdain. with his reputation irreparably tarnished. His former fans and colleagues expressed shock and disbelief at the revelations, as the crimes he was accused of stood in stark contrast to the personality he had portrayed on television. In April 2017, Hayden was found guilty of 2 counts of aggravated sexual assault and 1 count of forcible sexual assault, leading to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 40 years. An additional life sentence was later added onto his sentence. This effectively meant he would spend the remainder of his life in prison. Hayden is currently incarcerated at Louisiana State Penitentiary, the largest maximum security prison in the United States, also known as the Alcatraz of the South, where he continues to serve his sentence. Number 11, Joe Sun. Joe Sun, an actor known for his role as Random Task in Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery, is currently serving 34 to life in prison due to his involvement in a brutal 1990 crime that went unsolved for nearly 2 decades. The crime that led to Sun's incarceration involved the kidnapping and forcible sexual assault of a woman on Christmas Eve in 1990. At the time, Sun and an accomplice reportedly forced the victim into a car, subjected her to hours of nastiness only to leave her traumatized. The case went unsolved until 2008, when Sun was arrested on an unrelated parole violation. During the booking process, a DNA sample was taken, which matched evidence from the cold case of the 1990 assault. Following this DNA match, Sun faced multiple charges, including forcible sexual assault, kidnapping, and torture. However, because the statute of limitations had expired on the SA charge, he was prosecuted for felony torture instead. In 2011, a California jury found her guilty, and Sun was sentenced to 7 years to life in prison. He was 41 years old at the time of his sentencing and was incarcerated at Wasco State Prison in California. But wait, there is more. Barely a month after his incarceration, Joe was accused of killing his cellmate Michael Graham, who was serving 2 years for failure to register as a sex offender. He was afterwards moved to solitary confinement. 2 years later, he was charged with the murder of Michael, and 4 years after, he was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter. Joe was slapped with a further 27-year sentence and is now doing 34 years to life. Skylar DeLeon. In 2004, DeLeon and his then-wife, Jennifer Henderson, posed as prospective buyers for a yacht belonging to Tom and Jackie Hawkes, a well-liked couple who had recently decided to sell their boat to move closer to their family. The Hawkes had planned to retire comfortably, and their yacht, the well-deserved, was their main asset. DeLeon and Henderson, along with accomplices, arranged to meet the Hawkes under the guise of purchasing the vessel. They convinced the couple to take them out for a test cruise, but soon turned on them in a premeditated, violent plan. Once aboard, DeLeon and her accomplices overpowered the Hawkes, tied them up, and forced them to sign over ownership of the yacht. The plan turned darker when the couple was thrown overboard, weighted down, and left to drown in the Pacific Ocean. Their bodies were never recovered, adding an additional layer of horror and mystery to the case. Following the crime, DeLeon and Henderson began making large purchases, flaunting newfound wealth that quickly drew attention. Investigators soon connected DeLeon to the Hawkes' disappearance, and she was arrested. During the trial, more disturbing details emerged, including allegations of DeLeon's involvement in another killing in 2003. The evidence against her was overwhelming, with witness testimony and documentation linking her to both crimes. DeLeon was ultimately found guilty of multiple counts of murder, as well as charges related to the fraudulent financial schemes used to gain ownership of the yacht. In 2009, DeLeon was sentenced to death. She entered the California prison system at the age of 29 and remains on death row at San Quentin State Prison, where she has been housed since his sentencing. You may be asking why she is not facing the chair. Well, the death penalty has been suspended in California since 2019 due to legal challenges and concerns about its application, and as such, she remains on death row. Now in her early 40s, DeLeon has exhausted most of her legal options with little hope for a reduced sentence. Number 9. Joe Exotic. Joe Exotic, born Joseph Allen Schreibvogel in 1963, gained fame as the flamboyant owner of the Greater Wynwood Exotic Animal Park in Oklahoma. He spent years building his brand as a fierce advocate for big cats and exotic animals, often posting online videos that showcased his zoo and mocked those who opposed him. One of his fiercest critics was Carol Baskin, an animal rights activist and owner of Big Cat Rescue in Florida. Baskin had long accused Joe of mistreating animals and operating irresponsibly, and she actively campaigned against private big cat ownership. Over time, Joe's disdain for Carol Baskin grew into an obsessive hatred. He blamed her for his financial troubles, as her efforts had led to legislation that hampered his business. Joe started openly discussing his grudge against Baskin on social media, even producing videos that featured disturbing acts toward a dummy made in her likeness. These public displays hinted at the animosity brewing between them, but few could foresee the extent of Joe's desperation. In 2017, Joe's bitterness reached a tipping point. Prosecutors later revealed that he attempted to hire a hitman to kill Baskin, believing it was the only way to escape her relentless pressure. According to the evidence presented at his trial, Joe offered $3,000 to a zoo employee, Alan Glover, to travel to Florida and carry out the murder. However, Glover didn't go through with the plan and instead became a key witness against Joe. Meanwhile, undercover agents who had been investigating Joe's zoo operations compiled evidence of his involvement in the murder-for-hire plot. On top of this, authorities found that Joe had illegally killed 5 tigers at his zoo and falsified wildlife records, which allowed him to sell endangered tiger cubs in violation of the Endangered Species Act. In 2019, Joe Exotic was arrested and faced numerous charges, including 2 counts of hiring someone to murder Baskin and several violations related to wildlife trafficking and the Endangered Species Act. His trial was highly publicized, attracting media attention due to Joe's colorful personality, his Netflix documentary, and the sensational nature of the accusations. The jury ultimately found him guilty on 17 federal charges, including the murder-for-hire plot and multiple counts of wildlife violations. Exotic was sentenced to 22 years, later reduced to 21, in federal prison at the age of 56. He was incarcerated in the Federal Medical Center in Fort Worth, Texas, where he continues to serve his sentence, now in his early 60s, and is set to be released when he is 77 years old, but we are yet to see how that plays out, given his battle with prostate cancer. Number 8. Jerry Harris. The star cheerleader known from Netflix's Cheer became the subject of a disturbing criminal investigation in 2020. He found a family within the cheerleading community, rising to prominence on Navarro College's cheer team and later on the Netflix show. Yet, this newfound fame and access to social media created an environment where he reportedly began exploiting his influence. Investigators later revealed that Harris had engaged in explicit conversations with underage boys through social media, often convincing them to send inappropriate photos and videos. According to court documents, he targeted minors barely in their teens and coerced them over a period of time, using his status to earn their trust and manipulate their admiration. The case came to light when twin brothers came forward, alleging that Harris had coerced them into sending explicit content. Their mother filed a report with authorities, which led to an investigation by the FBI. The investigation uncovered a significant amount of evidence that linked Harris to multiple instances of solicitation of lewd material involving minors. Following his arrest in September 2020, Harris faced serious federal charges, including the production of lewd material involving children and traveling across state lines with the intent to engage in illicit activities with minors. This revelation led to immediate consequences. Netflix and other associated entities quickly distanced themselves from him, and his reputation in the cheerleading world was irreparably damaged. Harris pleaded guilty in February 2022 to two of the most serious charges: one count of receiving lewd material involving minors and one count of traveling with intent for sexual conduct with a minor. In July 2022, he was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, with an additional 8 years of supervised release. He was 22 years old at the time of his sentencing, and with good behavior, he could be released around the year 2034, when he will be in his mid-30s. Number 7, Shannon Richardson. Shannon Richardson, an actress with minor roles in shows like The Walking Dead and The Vampire Diaries, became widely known not for her screen appearances, but for a crime that sent shockwaves across the country. In 2013, Richardson was arrested in a high-profile case involving the attempted poisoning of public officials, including then-President Barack Obama. Her actions, fueled by personal motives and intended to frame her estranged husband, escalated into a federal investigation that ultimately led to her incarceration. Richardson's crime began to unfold in May 2013, when letters laced with ricin, a deadly poison derived from castor beans, were sent to several prominent figures, including President Barack, then New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, and the head of a gun control advocacy group. The letters, which contained threatening language, warned the recipients against infringing on citizens' gun rights. Ricin, while easily made, is incredibly dangerous, as even a small amount can prove fatal if ingested or inhaled. When the poisoned letters were intercepted, authorities launched a massive investigation to trace their source. Initially, Richardson attempted to place the blame on her husband, Nathan Richardson, with whom she was going through a tumultuous divorce. She went as far as claiming that she discovered castor beans and other evidence in their home, all pointing to Nathan as the culprit. However, as investigators examined her story, it began to unravel. They discovered that Shannon herself had ordered castor beans online, using her computer and email account, which contradicted her claims about Nathan's involvement. Authorities also uncovered that she had tried to implicate her husband to gain leverage in their divorce and custody battle over their children. Confronted with the evidence, Richardson eventually admitted to her role in mailing the ricin-laced letters. She confessed to trying to frame her husband as part of her scheme, which added an extra layer of deception and malice to her actions. Richardson was subsequently arrested and indicted on several federal charges, including making threats against the president and producing and possessing a biological toxin with intent to use it as a weapon. In 2014, Richardson pleaded guilty to the charges and was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. She was 36 years old at the time of her sentencing and is expected to remain incarcerated until around 2031. Number 6, Kaylan Walker. Kaylan Walker, an actor and rapper who appeared in films like Superfly and Kings, is currently serving a lengthy prison sentence following his conviction on multiple charges of sexual assault. Walker's crimes came to light after several women reported disturbing patterns of behavior in which he allegedly used his status to lure and assault them. According to court records, Walker presented himself as someone with industry clout who could help young women break into entertainment. He reportedly promised professional photo shoots, music connections, and mentorship opportunities, often under the guise of private meetings. However, these meetings reportedly turned into coerced encounters where Walker assaulted the women after they were isolated. The case escalated when multiple victims came forward, detailing similar stories of manipulation and assault that occurred between 2013 and 2018. Prosecutors argued that Walker deliberately preyed on aspiring models and young women with dreams of entering the industry, knowing that his promises of fame and success made them vulnerable to his manipulation. The accumulation of allegations revealed a disturbing pattern that Walker used consistently to exploit young women who trusted her. In October 2022, Walker was found guilty on charges of sexual assault involving multiple victims. He was convicted on 3 counts of forcible sexual assault, 2 counts of statutory forcible sexual assault, and additional charges of sexual assault. His conviction resulted in a sentence of 50 years to life in prison, a harsh punishment that underscored the severity of his crimes and the lasting impact on his victims. At the time of his sentencing, Walker was 27 years old, meaning he will likely spend the majority, if not all, of his life in prison. His earliest release date is expected to be in 2072, though it is possible he may never be released due to the nature and gravity of his crimes. Number 5. Zara Pythian. Zara Pythian, known for her role in Doctor Strange, faced a major downfall when she was convicted in a disturbing child sexual abuse case alongside her husband, Victor Mark. In 2022, both were found guilty of abusing a young girl over a lengthy period. The victim reported that the abuse began in 2005, initiated by a dare from Pythian. She later described being coerced into performing and recording explicit acts with the couple, actions that continued for a while and were carefully concealed by the pair. During the trial, prosecutors revealed that Mark, who had also been charged with unrelated indecent assault charges involving another minor, was seen as the primary manipulator in the relationship. Pythian's defense suggested that Mark's influence over her played a role in her actions, but the judge ruled that both were fully accountable for their crimes. The pair's complex dynamic led the court to examine the ways in which Mark might have influenced Pythian's behavior, though ultimately it did not absolve her of responsibility. Pythian, who had achieved a degree of success as a martial artist and actress, saw her career and public image collapse as details of the abuse surfaced. As a result of the trial, Zara Pythian was sentenced to 8 years in prison, while her husband received a 14-year sentence. Pythian, who was 37 at the time of her sentencing, is expected to serve at least half of her sentence before being eligible for parole, placing her release date around 2026. She is currently incarcerated in the UK. Number 4. Ryan Grantham. For his roles in shows like Riverdale and films like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, shocked fans and the entertainment world with the crime that led to his incarceration. His case begins in early 2020, when Grantham, struggling with personal issues, committed a murder that would unravel his promising career and result in a tragic end to his public life. Grantham, who had been dealing with mental health issues and a history of depression, found himself in a dark and deteriorating mental state. His family was reportedly aware of his struggles, but no one could have predicted the violence that would follow. On March 31st, 2020, Grantham fatally shot his 64-year-old mother, Barbara Waite, while she played the piano in their home. Afterwards, he set about drinking beer and smoking Mary Jane before packing 3 guns, ammunition, and 12 Molotov cocktails he had made. He also packed camping supplies and directions to the Canadian Prime Minister's cottage residence. He planned to drive to Ottawa with the intent to harm Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, though he ultimately abandoned that idea after driving about 124 miles and turned himself in to the police in Vancouver. Grantham later confessed to the crime, citing overwhelming feelings of depression and guilt. He claimed to have been contemplating other violent acts, including shooting up Vancouver's Lionsgate Bridge or Simon Fraser University, where he had been a student. After his arrest, Grantham faced significant legal repercussions. He was initially charged with first-degree murder, but later pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. The court found that his actions were both premeditated and fueled by his worsening mental health issues. In 2022, after a series of court proceedings, Grantham was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 14 years. He was 24 years old at the time of his sentencing. As of recent reports, he is currently incarcerated at a facility in British Columbia. If he serves the minimum time required before eligibility for parole, he will be eligible for release in 2036, at which point he will be 38 years old. Number 3. Jen Shah. Jen Shah's downfall began with a series of luxury-loving, high-profile missteps that ultimately led her to prison for fraud. Known for her role on The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, Shah projected an image of wealth and extravagance, delighting fans with her outspoken personality and lavish lifestyle. However, behind the glamour and bold public persona lay a darker truth, one that would eventually come to light in a way no one expected. Shah's crime was rooted in a scheme targeting vulnerable individuals, particularly the elderly, with promises of business services and opportunities that never materialized. Together with a close associate, Stuart Smith, Shah operated a telemarketing business that misled victims into purchasing fraudulent business services packages that were often expensive and worthless. The scheme involved selling lists of potential victims, known as leads, to other telemarketing entities that would then aggressively target these individuals. By manipulating and misleading customers into thinking they would gain financial success, Shah and her associates pulled in millions of dollars over nearly a decade. The ploy was particularly devastating for those targeted, many of whom were older adults on fixed incomes. Victims were persuaded to max out their credit cards or deplete their savings in the hope of gaining financial independence, a goal Shah's team promised but never delivered. Victims were sometimes convinced to continue investing after their initial payments, believing they were getting closer to success. When federal investigators eventually uncovered the scale of the operation, it became clear that Shah and her team had preyed on hundreds of victims, extracting millions of dollars. In March 2021, she was arrested in a sensational scene caught on camera for The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Federal authorities charged her with conspiracy to commit wire fraud and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Shah initially denied any wrongdoing, famously declaring her innocence both on and off the show. However, as the case progressed and the evidence mounted, her stance became increasingly untenable. Despite pleading not guilty in early stages, in July 2022, Shah changed her plea to guilty on the wire fraud charge, admitting to her role in the scheme and acknowledging the harm she had caused. Her reputation was shattered, and her once loyal fan base became divided, with many criticizing her actions and the harm inflicted on innocent victims. Bravo, the network that aired The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, distanced itself from her and limited her involvement in the show. At her sentencing, the court handed down a sentence of 6.5 years in prison, or 78 months, as part of her plea agreement. Shah, then 49 years old, was ordered to report to the federal prison camp in Bryan, Texas, in February 2023, where she would serve her sentence. Additionally, Shah was required to pay restitution to the victims, amounting to over $6 million. Shah's expected release date is set for 2029, meaning she will be around 55 years old when she completes her sentence. Since beginning her prison term, reports have suggested that Shah is working to rebuild her life by participating in various prison activities and focusing on personal growth. Number 2, Tamara Lynn Sitch. Tamara Lynn Sitch is best known as Sunny from her career in WWE. But did you know that she has also been an actor in the other questionable film industry? Her life has been marked by personal struggles and legal troubles that led to multiple arrests and ultimately her current incarceration. Sitch's troubles with the law began years before her most recent arrest, as she struggled with substance abuse issues that led to several DUI charges and brief stints in jail. Over the years, her battle with addiction became a public part of her story, with repeated offenses that threatened her career and reputation. Despite various attempts to seek help and reform, Sitch's issues with alcohol would continue to haunt her. In fact, between 2012 and 2019, she faced multiple DUI arrests across different states, each time risking her freedom and, at one point, even her ability to work, as she briefly lost her WWE Hall of Fame status. However, her most serious offense occurred in 2022, when Sitch was involved in a tragic car accident in Florida that led to the death of 75-year-old Julian Lasseter. According to police reports, Sitch was driving under the influence when she rear-ended another vehicle at a high speed, causing the crash that claimed Lasseter's life. After an investigation, it was revealed that Sitch had a blood alcohol concentration more than 3 times the legal limit, an alarming factor given her history of DUI offenses. Following her arrest for the fatal crash, Sitch faced a slew of charges, including DUI manslaughter, driving with a suspended license, and causing death while driving under the influence. In August 2023, Sitch pled no contest to the charges, avoiding a trial but accepting the serious consequences of her actions. She was subsequently sentenced to 17 years in prison. At the age of 50, this sentence means that Sitch will be released at 67 years of age, with a projected release date in 2039. She is currently held in a Florida state prison. Number 1, Oh Young-soo. Oh Young-soo, best known for his role as number 001 in Squid Game, found himself embroiled in serious legal trouble following an incident from 2017. Despite a celebrated career and being the first South Korean actor to win a Golden Globe, Oh faced allegations of sexual misconduct, specifically involving an accusation that he had non-consensually hugged and kissed a woman and made lewd comments towards her on multiple times. This incident came to light years later in 2022, leading to formal charges against him. Although he denied any wrongdoing, asserting that he apologized to settle the matter, the case moved forward, and he was found guilty in early 2024. Following the trial, Oh Young-soo was sentenced to 8 months in prison, though the sentence was suspended for 2 years, meaning he will only serve time if he violates certain conditions. Additionally, he is required to complete a 40-hour program focused on addressing sexual violence issues. This conviction has had significant ramifications for his career, particularly given his recent surge in global recognition after the success of Squid Game. He publicly objected the conviction, terming it as excessively harsh. Click here to see 47 celebrities currently rotting in jail. See you there.